This evening on First Alert Weather Extra, Tropical Storm Harold makes landfall in Texas, leaving historic rainfall in its path. What this means as the western portion of the country begins to recover from Tropical Storm Hilary. And as the heat continues to grip parts of the U.S., how it's affecting schools and its students. Plus, how Wisconsin is keeping beach visitors safe with this new water system.
WBRC Fox 6 News. First Alert Weather Extra starts now.
Welcome into First Alert Weather Extra. Chief Meteorologist Wes Wyatt. The next big thing, certainly the hot weather for us and the heat that is on the way. Let's take a look at the First Alert Weather Day that we have in effect starting tomorrow, continuing through Saturday. Several days, probably the most First Alert Weather Days I believe we've had ever issued. I mean, we're talking the rest of the week here, highs at or above 100 degrees across our area. And it's been quite some time since we've had a stretch of temperatures like that. We did reach 100 in Tuscaloosa today. And notice the Weather Service, well, they've issued the excessive heat warnings that will go into effect for tomorrow. And that stands for heat index levels that could top out as high as 113 degrees. Dangerous stuff out there, and right now it's dangerously hot, especially across West Alabama. Again, I mentioned Tuscaloosa hit 100 today. Right now 97, it's 92 in Birmingham, 94 in Anniston. We didn't get close to 100 in Birmingham. We only reached into the mid-90s. Both Birmingham and Anniston reached highs of 95 today. But hey, it feels like 100. It feels like 100 in Birmingham, 102 in Anniston, 108 right now is the current feels like temperature for places like Tuscaloosa, Pell City, Centerville right now feeling like 105 degrees. So hot is the word for the rest of the week, and not a lot of rain. Most areas will be dry for the rest of the week. Perhaps a couple of isolated storms over the weekend. Now the heat index is going to range from 105 to 110 for most areas. Now that said, with an actual high temperature of 100, that heat index isn't totally off the scale, if you recall. I mean, we had some days where we had highs in the 90s and the heat index was like 117 across parts of the area, but that's because the air relatively is a bit drier. And that's one of the reasons why the afternoons, especially in that 1 o'clock to 4 p.m. time frame, we really hit those extremes. But if you can just hold off until sunset time, you will notice quite the improvement. But dangerous stuff out there. Help watch out for coworkers out on the job site. Make sure everyone is staying well hydrated, and just be alert for symptoms of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. You start feeling dizzy, you start feeling nauseous and faint. Just make sure you take a break, stay hydrated, and just help to, again, as I mentioned, just help to watch out for each other in this hot weather over the next few days. A lot of practices going on, I know, and if you're going to be involved in some of the football band practices happening, again, make sure you don't overdo it. Make sure you stay well hydrated. This is the high and the forecast high temperature. Or I should say this is the record high and the forecast high temperature. So you can see where the records stand for this week and what we're forecasting. And just looking ahead here over the next several days, we'll be close. I don't think we're going to get quite to those record levels, at least for Birmingham. Looks like in a Saturday, we actually backed off by a degree. It's close. It's close. So it will be interesting to see the new data coming in and how these temperatures evolve over the next few days. But, you know, we've been talking a lot about a lot of tropical systems that's been happening. One of those is that system over the Gulf. It quickly formed into Tropical Storm Harold. And as it's made its landfall in Texas as the first named storm for this year's Atlantic hurricane season, it's bringing heavy rainfall to the state as post-tropical cyclone Hilary continues to break records across the western U.S. Ivan Rodriguez has the latest.
Powerful tropical storm strength winds unleashing fury on southern Texas, putting more than 1 million people under tropical storm warnings, triggering a local state disaster in Port Aransas. The city is under the threat of imminent disaster, injury, or loss of life or property. Meanwhile, Hilary, the first tropical storm to strike California in 84 years, rewriting rainfall record books in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Nevada.
Crazy rain. It's been pouring down like, I don't know, it's been nuts.
And triggering heavy flooding.
This was an extreme fashion. This is something that was unforeseen.
On top of dealing with disasters,
at the height of Hurricane Hilary, we experienced an outage of our main power to the hospital.
with elevators down, emergency crews evacuated more than 200 patients from White Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles.
Firefighters needed to assist with transporting the patients downstairs while we staged our ambulances in a very well-coordinated manner.
This is an extremely dangerous heat wave built across the central U.S. Blistering temperatures have shattered more than 8,500 daily heat records across the country in the last 30 days. Sweltering temperatures and the lack of air conditioning are delaying the start of some school districts in Illinois.
Staff and kids, there's health concerns. Whenever it's that hot, it is really challenging to sit in a space for 6-7 hours.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
On Monday, men and women in the Air Force Reserve flew through the eye of the tropical storm Hilary to help forecasters make more accurate predictions. Take a look at their mission. Pilots of the C-130 plane crossed the eye of the storm, and many times they're asked to do so by the National Hurricane Center. They go out and investigate. That's why we see these NVEST when we're looking at the tropics and see all these disturbances before they're actually a tropical depression. They then drop what's called a dropsonde. It's like a radio sonde that we send up with weather balloons, but it's a dropsonde. We drop it out of the plane and into the eye of the hurricane in various quadrants of the eye to collect data like wind speed and direction and temperature. This information then gets sent to the National Hurricane Center, where they'll predict the watches and the warnings and issue the coastal alerts. It was from there they found that the storm was weakening pretty quickly, and the crew was from Biloxi, Mississippi. They fly out of Keesler and head out to these tropical systems, but we are certainly grateful for what the hurricane hunters do to help ensure we have accurate forecasts during the tropical season. And across the world, dangerous rains in Chile have forced a state of catastrophe declaration. With 2 deaths and thousands of evacuations, this rain is being called the heaviest rainfall in 3 decades. Forecasters predict more rain in the mountains areas, which could lead to more flash flooding and landslides. We've been seeing so many systems there in the equatorial regions and areas further south there. It looks like Europe also is breaking records for heat, and France, all-time records were broken on Monday, with some areas seeing temperatures as high as 108. In Savona, Italy, they saw an all-time high of 102 degrees. They're currently 21 nations in Europe under heat warnings, and the heat is expected to continue throughout the rest of the week. Of course, we certainly can sympathize there with some of that hot weather, and fast-moving wildfires in northern Greece on top of that, taking a deadly toll and bringing more evacuations as wildfires in Greece continue to burn. 18 bodies were found on Tuesday, sadly, in the Evros region. Fire officials say that some of the victims could have been migrants crossing from the river from Turkey. Hundreds of fires have been burning out of control for days in northeastern Greece, with strong winds fanning many of the flames and prompting evacuations of several villages. So some sad news there. Of course, we've been bringing you those scenes as we talk about what's going to be or what's been happening there in Maui with respect to fires. But up next, meteorologist Matt Daniel is about to tell us all about a term called wet bulb temperatures and what that means for heat in a new segment called Weather Words. You are watching Weather Extra.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Good Day, Alabama.
A new morning comes with preparing right, because while you slept, news broke.
We have new information from that breaking news that happened this morning.
While you head out, the storm we gave you the first alert for is on its way in. And as the key turns the ignition, your shorter route to work is being found.
Avoid 459 southbound completely because of a crash.
A new morning means everything you need for a good day is on Good Day Alabama, always on your side.
The first alert traffic you need to get you there safe and on time. Tomorrow morning, everything you need for a good day is on Good Day Alabama.
You're late, out the door, and on the go. Don't worry.
Good Day Alabama continues all morning long.
And wherever you watch, this is what you need to know right now.
More reporters on the streets with more hours of news when you need it. Everything you need for a good day is on Good Day Alabama. Knowing first is everything. First Alert Weather.
Welcome back into First Alert Weather Extra. Today we have meteorologist Matt Daniel explaining why what's called the wet bulb temperature is important when it comes to heat and its meaning.
Of course, we've declared tomorrow through Saturday a First Alert Weather Day for dangerous heat. We've seen a lot of heat across not only here, but a good bit of the country all summer long. And we look at ways to measure the heat. And I'm sure you've heard of the heat index, but have you heard of a wet bulb globe temperature? No. Well, let me explain. So the wet bulb globe temperature, by the way, measures the heat stress when you're in direct sunlight. So it takes into account the actual air temperature, the humidity, wind, direction and speed, and the sun angle. And it's mainly geared for the military. It's geared for athletes that are working outdoors. Any physical activity outside is where this particular measurement is very important because it's looking at your health and how the temperatures impact your health. So let's compare the wet bulb globe temperature versus what you're probably more familiar with, the heat index. Well, did you know the heat index is measuring the humidity and the air temperature in the shade? Yeah, that's what it feels like in the shade. Well, with the wet bulb globe temperature, this is actually taking into account what it feels like when the sun is directly on you. So obviously that's going to create more hazards for your health when the sunshine is hitting right on you with the heat. And notice it also uses the actual temperature, as I was saying, relative humidity. But when it comes to the heat index, it doesn't take into account the wind, speed, or direction, does not take into account the clouds, and it doesn't take into account the sun angle. So really for the heat index, it's more critical, especially when there's no sunshine, like in the overnight hours in the morning. And then of course the wet bulb is very important when it comes to the peak heating of the day. So they actually have stages, categories for these wet bulb globe temperatures. So if it's elevated, that's the lowest tier. So for athletes outside, normal practice, maybe 5-minute breaks every 25 minutes so they can stay rested and hydrated. When it's in that moderate stage, those who are not as well conditioned, might want to reduce intensity, and they're recommending 5-minute breaks or rest every 20 minutes. And when it gets to that high range, that's when all athletes need to be under constant observation. They should remove their helmets and their equipment, and they need to take frequent breaks, 5-minute water rest breaks every 15 minutes. And when it gets into that extreme category, just want to suspend that practice. It's just way too hot. So I want to show you some exclusive data that we have on our system showing the future heat stress going into not only today but also going into tomorrow. Just want to show you an example at 7 o'clock. Notice we're in that yellow, so that's elevated. It definitely gets better, and then by 8 p.m. we don't see any colors. So that's why a lot of the high school football games might be starting those games a little bit later at the end of this week around 8 p.m. versus 6 or 7 p.m. just to help to reduce that heat stress on the football players, on the cheerleaders, on the marching bands. And then notice as we go into Wednesday, those colors are in that extreme range as we go into the afternoon hours. So really want to avoid strenuous outdoor activities, stay hydrated, know the symptoms when it comes to heat exhaustion. We just want to make sure you stay safe, and hopefully this weather pattern will break by the time we go into early next week.
Thanks, Matt. And speaking of the effects of heat, many schools in Ohio don't have any air conditioning, and they're struggling with keeping high temperatures inside under control. As Rachel Hersheimer reports, school sports teams are changing practices to keep the students safe.
We're inside. Hopefully it was effective. Hopefully it was beneficial.
Heat is keeping teams in Mason on the sidelines.
I get it. It's a change of atmosphere, but we got to figure this out.
Head football coach Brian Kastner says it's the Ohio high school sports guidelines forcing them to practice in the gym.
We have to obviously look out for the players' safety. I mean, that's basically what we're responsible for.
It's not just sports being impacted, it's learning as well. The Laughlin School District canceling classes for 5th through 12th grade students this week because the main campus building has no air conditioning.
How are you doing?
Really hot, but not too bad.
Inside Oak Hills High School, rooms are heating up.
Most of my classes are in non-air-conditioned weather, so it's kind of hot.
The district is making adjustments after the AC in some buildings, including the high school, Bridgetown, and some of the middle schools started acting up.
There's like multiple fans trying to blow heat out, but it's not working.
Meanwhile, parents are preparing in case school goes remote the rest of the week.
It's good that they're staying home to do the online because of the heat. I mean, they don't have air conditioning. What they want them to have, a heat stroke or something, you know?
Give me your eyes. Pay attention.
The situation is forcing teams to strategize and come up with a game plan as temperatures continue to rise.
We don't want to lose anyone to an injury. We don't want to lose anyone to an illness. I mean, heat illness and heat stroke is serious. I mean, you can lose a life. And so that's definitely a high priority.
All right, and here in our area, some football practice times and even games have been changed due to the dangerous heat on Friday. Some good calls. Has pushed back kickoff time for the Thompson-Opelika game on Friday. It will now start at 8 o'clock. Additional heat timeouts are being added to each quarter, and the lengths of the timeouts are also extended. The Alabama High School Athletics Association also gave schools clearance to start any games this week past 7 because of the hot weather. So some great moves there, trying to help keep everyone safe out there. Airlines began recovering Monday after historic Tropical Storm Hillary forced the cancellation of many flights. Over 1,000 flights were canceled and over 5,000 were delayed. Frontier and Southwest began among the airlines that were most impacted, that are being among the airlines most impacted. They suspended flights at Ontario International Airport and actually won't resume until tomorrow, while Southwest was able to resume flights yesterday after causing a ripple effect across the country, which caused nearly 190 Southwest flights in the U.S. to be canceled. So more travel nightmares there, no thanks to Hillary. New details on the heartbreak in Hawaii. And, you know, we've talked about the fires in Greece earlier. The death toll in Hawaii now from those wildfires is now up to 114. Most of those in and around Lahaina, Maui County, and Mayor Richard Bison says 850 people are still missing. Only a few of the deceased have been identified, and relatives are being asked to submit DNA samples to help identify those that are still missing. President Joe Biden.
The country grieves with you, stands with you, and will do everything possible to help you recover, rebuild, and respect culture and traditions when the rebuilding takes place.
You can see there I was mentioning President Joe Biden. He visited Maui to meet with the survivors and officials following the wildfire that, of course, devastated thousands, and promised the federal government will be there to help Maui rebuild. And, of course, we're do our part, and we want you to remind you that our parent company, Gray Television, is partnering with the Salvation Army to help the people of Maui recover. If you're able to donate to help the survivors, you can text Fire Relief to 51555. So coming up on Weather Extranet, we're going to dive into our weather and talk about just how long some of this hot weather is going to last and when we could expect a little bit of relief. But first, as we go to break, here is a look at today's Weather Almanac.
We heard the first alert. Mom says we have to go. She says I don't have time to grab any more toys.
Need to be in your tornado safe place. Get there right now as you have.
We have to get to our safe place because sometimes when you hear the siren, it's too late. That's why she says knowing first is everything.
We know weather can be grab the umbrella or jogging shoes, but it's so much more. It's a science, an art, led by knowledge and experience.
And no one has more of that than a WBRC First Alert weather team.
Warning you first with more hours committed to you. And the first forecast built to see weeks, days, and even minutes ahead, right down to where you live. From the team you trust on your favorite screen.
Doing the weather better. The WBRC First Alert weather team, always on your side.
The First Alert is more than a warning. It's a promise. A promise to get you out of harm's way with plenty of time to spare. 4 walls and a roof can be replaced. Lives can't. That's why knowing first is everything. First Alert weather.
Welcome into First Alert Weather Extra, a live look over the Magic City from Red Mountain on this hot Tuesday evening. We're at 92 degrees here in Birmingham. Very dry weather expected for tonight, but after sunset, we do enjoy a bit of improvement. This is one of our new Sky Vision cameras. This is from Avadian Credit Union in Vernon, Alabama. This is in Lamar County. Talk about a great eye in the sky. This is one of those areas we track a lot of weather through this part of the coverage area, but you can see there 95 degrees for us here in Lamar County. First Alert weather days tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the next several days here, 4 highs at or above 100 degrees. So this is something you don't want to mess around with. You want to make sure you try to plan around that peak heating, especially from 11 a.m. until 4 o'clock. Try to get an early start, maybe hold off until later on in the evening. You can see this is one of the tools that we have, the heat stress threat levels here are greatest before 7 p.m. You can see after 7 o'clock, of course, we start to enjoy some improvements. But as we get into the day on Wednesday, you can see by 11 a.m. Already by that point, we're getting into the danger territory. And look at this in the afternoon. It's almost off the scale as far as the future heat stress forecast there. So dangerous stuff. Next couple of afternoons, try to, again, avoid the peak heating of the day. We talked about some of those games even being pushed back on Friday to help out with this hot weather. 6 o'clock through midnight tonight. Not a major drop in temperatures, although we won't have the sunshine, which also, has an impact on that heat stress index there. But with respect to this evening, still some 80s on the map. The air conditioner unit is going to be working overtime through the overnight. Overnight lows only down into the mid 70s. May catch a few breaks in the morning, but again, that heat comes back. Notice tomorrow, we're going to have highs once again close to 100 in several areas, including places like Birmingham, Jasper, Alabaster, Fayette showing 101, Tuscaloosa 101, 102 showing up there in Utah. And by the way, tomorrow is the first day back for students at the University of Alabama. So students, stay well hydrated. You head out there to the quad. You got to walk across the quad, go from one building to another. Just make sure you stay hydrated and you don't stay out too long. Try to find the AC cool off. You're going to need it out there. Heat index is going to be at or above 105. It looks like into Friday. But notice next week, by Sunday, we start to see those temperatures take a little bit of a dive. That's because we will see this heat dome starting to finally back off a bit. We've been talking about in the tropics. We've had tropical depression now, Harold. There it is, moving across South Texas. And I'll tell you what, for folks here in Texas, they're loving it. They're getting some rain, some breaks in the hot weather. You can see it's moving there off to the west direction. It is slowing down, so that could lead to some trouble spots with respect to flooding. But Tropical Storm Franklin, that's moving to the north and expected to cross the Dominican Republic for the rest of the week. And by Sunday, it's expected to turn more northerly. You see that? possibly growing into a strong Category 1 hurricane. Winds up to 85 miles per hour. Now, still, if you have plans for this weekend, not expecting any direct impacts down along the Gulf Coast. You can see the Gulf of Mexico. Here's the Atlantic. Again, this system is way off to the east. It's going to be tracking to the north, but it will be kind of interesting to see what happens with this here over the next few days. As we gather new data, we'll have a much better idea on how that system is going to evolve. There's also GERT that's out in the Atlantic, a weak system. It's just almost stationary, hardly moving, and then several disturbances that we're watching out over the far eastern Atlantic. But with all this happening, and as we expected, several of these disturbances to start firing up here, getting closer to the peak of hurricane season, no immediate threats, again, to the Alabama Gulf Coast. So the big story for us is the first alert for the heat. And you can see also for Monday and Tuesday, we've got that chance for scattered thunderstorms. So a little hope there on the horizon that we'll finally see these temperatures improve going into next week. On the science side of things, which we've been talking about a lot of science today, beachgoers in Wisconsin have a new way to tell if the water is safe. Authorities are using a new device to detect harmful bacteria. Caitlin Holt has more details.
Noah Ryan loves his job.
I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And he says he considers himself pretty lucky.
I get to come down here and hang out on my off hours. It's a pretty sweet gig.
It's not just a day at the beach for Noah. He has a job to do.
All right, so take your bottle, get in the water. Usually it's way calmer than this, so I'm just gonna go for it.
The work attire for this job is also a little different.
Yeah, shout out to Chacos.
Noah works as an intern with UW Oshkosh on a new project that tests the levels of E. coli bacteria at beaches in Door County.
But you only need 100 mils, so I always dump a little bit out just to make sure.
After getting results from the sample back at the lab, interns like Noah are able to inform people of the water quality almost instantaneously.
Right on my phone, there's an app.
The app controls the colors of the traffic light sign.
Well, it's such a simple concept that it's been engraved into our psyche ever since our youth. Green means go, red means stop, even in nature.
Tim Kazmerzak, the Door County Parks manager, says he has high hopes for these signs. There are currently 2 operational bacteria traffic lights, and there are 3 more they hope to have running soon.
People make an informed choice about their health and how they want to handle their recreation in the water at the time.
And for Noah, it's not a bad way to spend a work day.
It's up in Bailey's Harbor here, rent-free, no complaints.
And Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources says workers test the water for bacteria between 1 and 5 times a week. And you know, you hear so many stories about these amoebas, and it's just great to see that they're testing those water sources. As we take a look at the 7-day forecast, some hot weather over the next several days. You'll certainly want to make sure you stay well hydrated. Throw a few extra bottles of water in the lunchbox for tomorrow. Don't overdo it. And as I said, you know, help watch out for co-workers out there on the job site. Make sure if you start feeling dizzy, start feeling faint, you take a break. Sit down, find a shade, and take it easy out there. This weekend and the next week, we got scattered storms coming back. Overnight lows in the 70s. Notice the daytime temperatures, though, start to back off. So looks like we are going to have some improvements on the way as we go into next week. But we'll take another look at the 7-day forecast. We'll have new advisories coming in, new model data, more specifics on the temperatures. That's all on your side tonight, first at 9. Be sure to stay with us for Fox 6 News later this evening.